Hi, Year 12s. My name is Mr. Weston. I'm Head of Geography. This is just a quick video to welcome you all to A-Level Geography at Hayesfield and say that we're really looking forward to seeing you in September. I'm just going to share my screen with you so I can give you a bit more information. Okay, so work properly. There we go. So, as I say, my name is Mr. Weston. Some of you will know me from GCSE Geography. For others of you, I will be new. But I'd like to introduce you to the rest of the geography teaching team at Hayesfield. So, there's me. There's also Mr. Notton, Mr. Gould, and Mrs. Brown, who will all be involved in some way teaching Year 12 or Year 13. Okay, so that's the team that you'll be working with. A little overview of what you'll be learning across the 2 years at A-Level. In Year 12, we have units on dynamic landscapes, basically physical geography units, and units in dynamic places, basically human geography units. The physical units are tectonic processes and hazards, which most of you will be familiar with from GCSE, although this will be taught and studied obviously at greater depth. And the other topic there will be coasts. Again, one that should be relatively familiar to you, but it will be something that we look at in much greater level of detail and depth than previously. The human units, which I teach actually, will be globalization and regenerating places. These might be a little less familiar to you. And then in Year 13, again, there's a physical human split, and physical units, water cycle and water insecurity. So some sort of technical stuff there on the water cycle, how it works, but also looking at things like flooding and droughts, but also how we use water as a resource, how we manage that resource to make sure that we've got a reliable, plentiful, safe supply for people. Then the carbon cycle, big overlaps between these two actually, carbon cycle and energy security. That's how the carbon cycle works, how it interacts with the oceans in the atmosphere, for example. Obvious links to climate change there, but also how we manage and how we can affect the workings of the carbon cycle and how we provide energy for ourselves and try and create energy security, hopefully in a way that doesn't cause too many problems for the carbon cycle and the climate. And then finally, the human topics that we look at in Year 13 are superpowers. So looking at things like the idea of the US as the one true global superpower, but also how it's maybe being increasingly challenged by the rise of China and other resurgent superpowers. And then the other one that we looked at is migration, identity and sovereignty, really relevant and important topics, particularly at the moment. So that's a sort of brief overview. If we look in a little bit more detail at what you'll be doing in Year 12, you will have looked at some of these, of course, at GCSE, and I know, because I've seen a lot of the fantastic work you sent in for your transition projects, you've been looking at these for your transition projects too. So physical topics in Year 12, obviously tectonic hazards and coasts. Tectonic hazards, as well as looking at the theory behind plate tectonics and the different way that hazards are caused. You will look at some of the newer theories. The word theories is quite important, and there is some degree of debate around how some of these should be explained and how they're caused. So you look at that in greater depth than you have previously. You'll also look at things like the disaster risk equation, which tries to look at why some areas are maybe worse affected by hazards than others, and the different factors that may impact upon that. Looking at coasts, obviously coastal processes and landforms, but also a lot looking at management. How do we manage coasts effectively? Thinking about some of the unintended consequences that can occur from our attempts to manage the coast, and how coasts are being impacted by things like climate change, what that's going to mean for coastal erosion and coastal defences in the UK and around the world. Human topics in Year 12. First one, regenerating places, predominantly urban, predominantly looking at why certain towns and cities or parts of towns and cities may be less successful than others, and why they may need regeneration, help bringing them up. But where that gets really interesting is not just looking at how that's done and why that's done, but it's looking at the contested nature of some of it. So, for example, one person's successful regeneration might be another person's gentrification. And, you know, does regeneration really take into account the needs of all the people, particularly maybe local people and poorer people? And then globalization, massive topic. But again, where it gets more interesting is when we look at some of the controversies, the contested nature of it. What are the arguments for globalization as a positive force? What are the criticisms of globalization as a negative force? Also, obviously, we can't really look at that without thinking how that may change in the future, particularly in the context of what's been happening recently. So really broad and interesting, exciting topics to really get your teeth into in Year 12. As well as thinking about the topics and the content, think about how we work and think at A level. It is more complex. There will be a greater emphasis on evaluating, much more so than in GCSE. You would have started to look at assessment and evaluation at GCSE, of course, but this becomes more important at A level. Really considering complex issues, thinking about how different factors interact with each other, thinking about different perspectives on issues, thinking about different players, how different people and groups of people are involved and how their views may differ and why. Okay, next, just thinking about how we work and how we try and support you during your studies at A level. Lots and lots of different things, obviously predominantly for the teaching and teacher time, but also a lot of resources provided for you to help you. An awful lot of stuff we're making available for you on Quizlet, which a lot of you will be familiar with already, Seneca, but also resources sharing with you through platforms like Schoology and Google Classroom as well. Access to wider reading through subscriptions that we have in school as well. Thinking about what you're going to need when you start in Year 12, and having a textbook or revision guide, so that you've got something to support you away from the classroom will be essential. The one that we really recommend is the Oxford one. We use the Oxford one in class sometimes, as well as Pearson textbook. But in terms of one for you to use at home, we tend to find that Oxford one is the more student-friendly one. So this is the one we recommend. You could either go for the textbook, which is obviously a fuller publication, or You could go for the revision guide, which has a lot of the same content, but it's a slightly pared down version of that, and as a result is a little less expensive. So you will need those, obviously your folder, your subject dividers, so that you can be organised. And we will be doing fieldwork, which is a really important part of the course, and for me the best, most enjoyable, most exciting part of the course is always the fieldwork as well. So bear in mind that there will be that as well. So coming on to that, obviously regulations and sort of wider things that are happening at the moment permitting, we will be doing fieldwork. We'll do some residential fieldwork, coastal, and also more local urban fieldwork, which we tend to do in Bristol as well. And that's a really important part of the course. It really boosts your understanding of what we're doing. It makes things come really to life, you know, the geography through that. Also really important because it's the way that you'll collect primary data for your NEA, your independent investigation coursework, which is quite a challenging thing to do, but a really interesting thing to do that will really test you and really get you to think, really get you to be independent. So difficult, but hopefully satisfying and enjoyable, and really excellent preparation for higher education as well, when you go on to university, hopefully after your A-levels. Okay, also potentially as well, other enrichment fieldwork opportunities in Enrichment Week, things permitting, things that we've done in the past that A-level students have had the opportunity to be involved with, include trips to Iceland and Lanzarote, and hopefully we'll be able to offer similar things again. But obviously you'll have to watch this space with regards to that. Okay, right. That is about it from me. Just to say, really looking forward to seeing you all in September. A really exciting geography course for you to join and take part with in September. I've enjoyed seeing your work so far for your transition projects. Have a good summer, and I'll see you in September. Thank you and goodbye.